Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Earth Day Eve 2022. We're very happy to have you joining us tonight for this special virtual event presented by DM&S at Home. My name is Trent Noss. I'm the managing editor at the Institute for Science and Policy, a special project of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Tonight, we're taking some time to think about sustainability. We certainly know that with climate change, the challenges that our planet faces are immense and are going to require a lot of action on a lot of fronts. But in many ways, the solutions we need are already all around us. The foods we eat, the transportation we use, the kinds of spaces that we choose to inhabit, all of those can really make a positive impact, and they can give us agency as individuals. So I'd encourage you tonight, as you hear from some of our panelists, to think about the ways that you can bring climate action into your own community. Here in Colorado, we're very fortunate that a lot of businesses and organizations, community groups, and individuals are working on these solutions and are coming up with creative ways to make those kind of impacts that we need and make our daily lives even more environmentally friendly. So we're going to be hearing from some of those local trailblazers tonight and explore ways that we can all get more involved and that we can make this Earth Day one worth celebrating. So I wanted to note a couple programming things. One of our announced guests, Sherri Billimoria from RMI, unfortunately she's under the weather tonight, so she won't be able to join us. Sends her apologies, and we wish her a speedy recovery. And the other thing tonight is we want to hear from you. This program is designed to be interactive. So if there's a question that's on your mind, if you want to ask one of our panelists a question, get more detail on something, let us know. Open up that chat and drop that in there, and we will try to get as many of those answered as possible. So without further ado, we're going to get into our program here. We have a real treat for you tonight. I am delighted to welcome Chef Eevee Vita, aka DJ Cavem. Calling Denver home, he coined the term eco-hip-hop in 2007. And he uses music as a way to talk about climate change, food justice, and plant-based foods. As an activist, educator, and a vegan chef, his award-winning album, The Produce Section, fused hip-hop with eco-friendliness, not two things that maybe have always seemed to go together. He's performed at the White House. He's been featured in Oprah Magazine and The Rachel Ray Show, among many other media outlets. And he shared the stage with Nick Jonas, Questlove, Wyclef Jean, and many more. He dedicates his time to organizations and projects dedicated to promoting wellness, eating healthy, and environmental awareness. So I am absolutely delighted. DJ Cavem, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Peace and love. What's going on, world? Thank you for spending your time. Yeah, where should we start, my guy?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, about some of the projects you've been involved in, and why sustainability means so much to you?
Wow, I'll tell you straight up, when I think about sustainability, holistic health, culinary climate action, it's really something that I feel like we're already involved in. Everyone wants to have a beautiful space, but we need to know that there is no way. So composting and recycling is the solution to all that. When we try to take care of our mind and body, we're always looking for a way that can be, of course, positive for the body, but also good for the planet at the same time. So we're thinking about natural resources, utilizing the idea of holistic health to really address issues like obesity, at the same time cooperative economics, at the same time addressing sequestering carbon out of the atmospheres through urban farming. So my last album, Concrete Garden, that's going to be released tomorrow on Earth Day, big celebration right here in the city of Denver, because I think it's important, to kind of show where the home of hip hop for environmental hip hop is. And so, of course, we're celebrating with that style. So sustainability is a broad term, but I think to sustain is cool, but to regenerate is even better. We can actually grow our mind, our body, our soil, through composting, through changing the acidity in the ocean, to addressing issues of biodiversity by literally planting, like biomimicry. And that whole style of that really opens up your thought process. It creates the beautification in the community. Really what going green is all about. You got to go green within, but also got to heal your mind, body, and soul. So that's the vibe.
That's great. I'm curious about how your love of food and being in the kitchen, and then how that combined with your love of music. Are those two things that have always been intertwined for you?
Wow, when I think about that, it's always been intertwined, but it's more of the style of like how we're, creating this biomimicry for ourselves. We're not just growing food, we're growing people. And so with Concrete Garden, we think about like, what could last and grow unapologetically. What dandelion, it comes up in the toughest streets, right? And at the same time, we have that same idea of how we can like fortify our heart and our body. You know what I mean? So you got this. When it comes down to being plant-based, I've been vegan for over 20, almost 25 years, almost. When I think about the timing of, when I started, it was definitely animal rights activism. I had a deep, clear path through, Rastafarianism to open me up to really what, before the word vegan, it was Itad. I was eating a lot of stews and callaloo and things that came straight out of the roots, and with that access really opened me up. And nowadays you can throw a rock and find a veggie burger. So sustainability and the idea of plant-based lifestyle is a really cool way to fight against issues like climate change. At the same time, help create healthier food access in communities that are suffering from food-related illnesses. So with that, I did start this culinary climate action workshop called Decolonize the Kitchen, which was birthed out of this concept called Recipes for Resistance. And the whole goal was to just show people healthy plant-based recipes that they can actually get involved in. So check this out for the start.
What's good, y'all? That's your man, Sherri, live and direct right here, representing Earth Guardians and the squad, the crew, Plant-Based Records. We're gonna be rocking right here for a raw food, no bake cheesecake. What we have is pink salt, raw soaked cashews, coconut shreds, dates, walnuts, vanilla bean, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries. And you're gonna need some maple syrup. On the bottom, we can either use like chia seeds. Sometimes I've even used like oatmeal, but today we're gonna use coconut shreds. So what you're gonna need is some dates and some walnuts, because we're gonna make the crust. If you're using mature dates, always take out the pits. Walnuts, that's key. So when it starts to clump up like that, it's done. Coming up next, now you gotta go ahead and start to lay your crust. You wanna press it down to where it's an even thickness, but it starts to push out to the walls, right? It's about a half an inch thick right here. So what's in the filling of the cheesecake? No cheese, but there is some cashews. So you want to use about 2.5 cups of cashews that have been soaked and drained overnight. However many cashews you got, you want to cover that up with maple syrup. For the flavor, you already know, you want to add some vanilla. Sometimes you might want to add almond extract, but here we go. Yeah, you can add chocolate, you can add different flavors that you're feeling. One of the most important parts, it's got to be the coconut oil, though. You want to get fair trade organic coconut oil. Looking for that high pitch on it. When you start to hear that high pitch, that means everything is nice and thick. It's ready. This is definitely gonna be bomb. Shout out to Alchemia on this one. So now it's time to pour cashew cream into the cake. Now this is the fun part. It's where you get the chance to decorate, add your flavor, add your vibes to it. That's the best part. You definitely want to have a top on it so you don't get the freezer burn. You want to leave it at night for at least about 4 hours.
But you get the vibe, right? So
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of, you can hear all the audio and all that jazz, right?
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
heard
for
everything.
sure. I love it. It's such a different way when, because when we think about communicating climate change, I feel like you're in a new space. You're doing something a little different than a lot of people might expect. So as you're out in the community, as you're talking to people, are they surprised by your kind of bringing food into the hip hop space?
I mean, everybody wanted to understand, like, why I age slowly or whatever it is, like why I keep the same smoothie on me or why I'm, hitting up all the juice bars on tour. But at the end of the day, they realize that's what gives me the energy to perform and do what I do. And as far as the hip hop community goes, and then the influence on working with artists who, of course, they might be in their regular, style and their genre. And my goal is to get them to pull them into something that has a little bit more meaning and to write something that can actually inspire the next generation around issues of compost and recycling, all that jazz. Like for instance, shooting this video and almost finishing editing. I would love to show you guys some shot lists for something called Garden Snakes. A local artist who was signed to Cash Money Records named Trev Rich is playing at the Summer Jam this year. And we got a song together. It's called Garden Snakes. And I thought that it would be cool to kind of vibe on that because we are shooting this at the gangster gardener Ron Finley's house, as well as well-known, businessman and chef Matthew Kinney, raw food vegan chef. So like we shot this in LA to kind of show what a CSA looks like, growing in your backyard, but then selling food to the community. And to be able to do that through hip hop, we know what the vibe is. We know we're referencing it. We're actually trying to entice the ideas of changing the market towards sustainability through hip hop. And so I'll show you some kind of quick clips of that. And you get a cool sense of like some of the vision that I feel like is really going to be able to work for not only the next generation, but for people who really want to vibe on this too. So let me show you how we get this in real quick. Check this out. Yeah, I know I had enough. Make sure we have the right screen for my folks. Hold on now. You still with me? I want to make sure you're still there.
Still here, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, cool. I saw something that looked like it popped off. Yeah.
We should add too that you're going to be performing tomorrow on Earth Day at the McNichols Building in Civic Center Park in Denver, and I think Ron Finley will be there with you. Yeah,
here's the flyer for anyone who's really interested for it. It's going to be a beautiful, amazing party for Concrete Garden, which is this album. This is an opportunity to highlight inner school gardens, in support with the Denver Music and Advance Fund. Shout out to Denver Arts and Venues and, the Denver Climate Action, Sustainability, Resilience crew at Denver Botanic Gardens. All the squad, all the folks came together to really organize to celebrate Earth Day. Real talk, the fact that we get the chance to do it here with you all is it is a treat. You know what I mean? Yeah, before I even get into it, I'll kind of show you some of the stuff I've been working on with Plant-Based Records, because this is kind of like the highlight. It really was pushing like this vision, you know what I'm saying? Let me show you real quick. Boom. Let's see right here. Summary, we breaking it down. Influence, music, culture, really want to like transform the way youth are thinking about. So we had to drop seed packets to really like get them into the ideas of addressing the issues. You know what I'm saying? Like we know what's up. Like there's a higher death rate in the hood, for asthma and just living in communities that don't have, access to organic options that much. There's so many food swamps from the places around the inner city. And so providing like cooperative economics really is going to like build the youth up. With Plant-Based Records, we drop the seeds, digitally distribute them with QR codes on the back, engaging artists to really create mentorship programs and finding other artists who can actually write about these concepts. You know what I mean? Like if there's a social justice issue in their area, we like to encourage them and like help them figure out ways to create solutions through music, So full on goals, of course, the recreation, got to recruit people, put people on game. with the style of what PBR is. Originally started off by making beats out of beats. As a conductor for electricity, I got like 4 different TED Talks. And one of them is called Plant-Based Records. And it was the birth of this whole idea. You know what I mean? We got a team and it continues to go like that. But tomorrow, that's what we're really celebrating. You know what I mean? And let me get this clip up for you because it's trying to act a little funny on it, but boom, there we are. You can still see my screen, right?
Yep, looks good.
Check this out.
Garden snakes out, garden snakes out. Pocket full of dreams, watch your big mouth. They got Terminator C's, take your lights out. They must sell a lot of greens, watch me break out. Always on the phone, always on the phone. See us in your track, got another home. All the farmers on the block got their skin tone. So I'ma post up on the market till it's all gone. Broccoli in the work, broccoli in the work. Turn the compost, flipping in the dirt. Flip the dirt, turn it to that network. Now you see what's in my pockets, on my network. Pocket full of seeds, watch me grow first. Red char classic, call it red alert. Stop yelling at your kids, that's not how it works. See, they always love the veggies when it's out the dirt.
But yeah, you know, I can talk all day, but like for real, like the energy of like using hip hop to address issues of what it can look like as an urban farmer, what it can look like as you know, being a CSA, what it can look like, you know, connecting with the people just through like culinary climate action and through, you know, food is medicine. I think we can do that. We just gotta use some form of medium, you know what I mean, to make the food taste good. So with all that being said, you know, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. And I have one question for you before we go. If you were to give some advice or tell our audience some things, 1 or 2 things that maybe they could do right now to get involved or learn more about the issues or something, what would you say?
Wow. If you're not signed up for composting and recycling already, come to my album release party tomorrow for Concrete Garden at the McNichols building. It'll be there. We're actually doing yoga at 2 p.m., a inner city gardening workshop with Brigitte Mars at 3 p.m. And I'm doing a culinary climate action cooking class. If you don't know how to cook, come take a workshop and sign up for composting and recycling. So galvanize organizations that are doing, you know, and this work, support them, you know, learn how you can actually be more economically, you know, intelligent, because I think like the best way to, you know, to help, you know, around this is to really like educate each other. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be real with you. You know, information is so important. And so yeah, take your time to just get that chlorophyll out, get that bukashi, you know, study about vermicomposting, you know, all these things that really are, you know, helpful towards giving back. But at the end of the day, at least sign up for composting and recycling. Real talk. I'll be at the McNichols building. Come get a hug, take a picture. You know what I mean? Come grab some organic seeds and remember that, you know, it's definitely easier than being green than we thought, you know? And we gotta remember how we can encourage each other. So tell a friend, y'all. Peace and love. You know what's up? Follow me on Instagram if you need any recipes and stuff like that. Either there or Twitter at IETEF, or you'll find me on the DJ Cavem. Number love, y'all.
We'll put those links in the chat. Thank you, DJ Cavem. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow at the McNichols building.
Peace and love, y'all. Peace.
All right, take care.
Ciao.
All right, I'm going to welcome in our next guest of the evening. Julia Davila is a project manager at Drive Clean, Colorado, and actually started as a Clean Cities intern there in September 2020. She's a recent environmental studies grad from St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, and grew up in the Bay Area of California. Previously, she has interned with City of Palo Alto Utility and also volunteers with the Sierra Club. We're going to talk a little bit about electric vehicles, which is a topic that is definitely top of mind right now and very, very relevant on Earth Day. So Julia, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead and dive in there. And I'll just remind the audience, if you have questions for Julia as she's presenting, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll try to get to a couple of them after the short presentation.
Yeah, so my name is Julia and I am a communications and engagement manager with Drive Clean Colorado. I also manage our Drive Electric Colorado initiative, which encourages the adoption of electric vehicles in the state. And with this short presentation here, I hope some of you are inspired to consider making the switch to drive an electric vehicle, as it's one way you can take personal climate action in your own daily life. So I'll give some background about EVs in Colorado. Before I go further into what Drive Electric Colorado is, I wanted to share some information that's specific to our state. So currently there are 51,641 EVs on the road in Colorado, and this number has been pretty rapidly increasing in the past few months. These include a wide variety of makes and models, such as Teslas or Nissan Leafs, but there has also been an increase of new models and newer manufacturers that are hitting the roads. And here are some examples of the newer EVs in Colorado. Next time you're out driving, see if you notice any of these models or any others. A quick way to distinguish an EV from just a regular gas car is that it's not going to have a tailpipe at the back of the car. And that means it's not going to emit any direct pollution like gas cars do. So some of the models here are pretty cool, and you may have seen them on the road already. But if you have not yet, then here are some example photos just in case. Right. And now that we have that brief introduction about EVs, I'd like to give more information about Drive Electric Colorado. So it's an initiative that encourages EV adoption across the state through education, awareness, and working with other committed partners to break down the barriers that people are facing in making the switch to drive electric. And we do this by hosting events for consumers, working with dealerships, utilities, policymakers, fleets, and other organizations to help the state reach its goal of 940,000 EVs on the road by 2030. Drive Electric Colorado was established in October of 2020, so pretty recently, and it's also part of Drive Electric USA, which is a Department of Energy funded project that also encourages EV adoption in a variety of other states across the country. Here's our website for Drive Electric Colorado. So it's just driveelectriccolorado.org. And this can be your go-to resource for anything EV related. On here, we have information about charging, tax credits and incentives. We can connect you with dealerships and really anything else that you may have any interest in learning about. We also do have a page dedicated to e-bikes if you're interested in making the switch to a different form of electric mobility. We do support many forms of alternative clean transportation, such as electric car shares, e-bikes, scooters, carpooling, and just walking to your destination if you can do that. So our website's a great starting point to learn the basics of EVs and has a variety of information to help you feel most informed when making the switch to an EV. And one thing that we're really trying to dispel with Drive Electric Colorado are EV myths. So there are a lot of misconceptions about EVs, and we're trying to clear up as many as possible. These here on the screen are some of the more common misconceptions that we hear. The more people that we can educate about EVs, the better it is. So I invite you to check out these myths and their Mythbuster blog posts on our website. And I'll go over these topics briefly just to give you some background of how we're kind of dispelling these misconceptions. So the first one is that charging will be difficult. So charging is actually really easy with an EV. You can actually charge your car with the same outlet that you use to charge your phone, and 80% of EV owners actually charge at home. So if you're thinking about needing to always go to a public charger, most of the time that's not going to be true unless you're going to be doing a road trip. And I'll kind of touch on that when I go into range a little bit. The next point, that EVs are only for the wealthy. EVs are becoming more accessible, and that's happening through federal and state tax credits as well as local utility incentives. So right now, individuals can get up to $7,500 for a new EV, and then $2,500 in the form of a Colorado state tax credit. So when you combine those, that's a good chunk of change that you can get off a new car that people may not know about. And then in addition, Denver is covered by Xcel Energy, and they also have EV rebates to purchase a car. And then they also help with if you're going to be upgrading your charging at home. Now, the next point of EVs not having enough range, this is something that we hear fairly often, but it's kind of paired with the idea that you need an EV to drive super far. Now, when you think about how far the average person's driving a day, that's usually only about 40 miles. And now with a lot of people working from home, there may not really be the need that often to drive long distances that you might think of that you need with an EV. So many EVs have close to or even over 300 miles of range, which is plenty for a road trip if you are taking that long drive. But also just consider how often you're really doing that, long across multiple states drive. If it's not going to be multiple times a year, like maybe you can just rent a car for that drive, or just think about how you're going to be planning your road trip in order to make those charging stops and make that drive as comfortable as it can be. A lot of EV drivers that I've talked to have said that they can't imagine going back to a gas car, especially when doing a long road trip, because since EVs are so smooth and quiet and comfortable, you're feeling a lot more refreshed and relaxed after the road trip versus a gas car drive can be really draining. So that's also something to consider. And then the last one, that EVs aren't really environmentally friendly. So EVs are better for the environment than gas cars. Like I said before, they don't have any tailpipe at the back, so there's no direct pollution coming out there. And EV batteries can also be recycled and reused. So batteries can be reused as a form of energy storage for wind and solar, for example, and they can also be recycled. So the battery can be taken apart. The minerals inside can be used for other uses so that they don't have to be mined again. And just considering that the International Council of Transportation did a study in, I believe, 2021 about the lifetime greenhouse gas emissions for EVs. And they found that in the US, even when considering mining and battery production and charging from an energy grid that isn't 100% clean, EVs are still 60 to 70% lower in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than gas cars. So those are some EV facts for you. Next, I want to go over a resource that we offer. So if you are interested in electric vehicles and you have any questions, but you're not really sure where to go, that's where we come in. So we offer free coaching to anyone who needs it. That just means that we're able to answer any EV related questions. There's a form on our website if you want to send us a question there, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And then we also work with a group of EV drivers who support our mission and are passionate about EVs. And these are our volunteer EV coaches. So these are real EV drivers who can speak to their experiences in vehicles, and then they can also support our events by showcasing their cars and talking to people there. We also provide assistance if you need charging at your workplace, business, or apartment. So let us know if you are trying to get charging there, and we can connect you with our coaches on our team who can help those managers go through that grant funding. Now I want to go into some of the steps that you can do if you're interested in an electric vehicle or you just want to learn more about it. We do have a bunch of events coming up. We have an event tomorrow and Saturday, some other events in Earth Month, and then through the summer, we're just going to be packed with events. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn more. The first one tomorrow is going to be in Colorado Springs. So I know many of you may be in the Denver area, but if you are a little farther or if you want to make the trip, we're doing an event at the Eevee outlet there, which is a pre-owned EV dealership. There's going to be test drives, a showcase. Our team will be there to answer questions as well as volunteer EV coaches. And then there's going to be a lot of plug-in hybrid and full battery electric cars that are more affordable because they've been pre-owned. Another exciting event we have is in Lakewood, so closer to many of you, I'm sure. And this will be their Earth Day celebration and we're hosting the EV showcase and ride and drive. So if you see here, the vehicles that are going to be showcased are going to be the ones that are in the line at the top. So exciting ones we have there, the Mustang Mach-E, the Rivian, an electric motorcycle. And then for the test drive, some really great vehicles too. The Volkswagen ID4, a vehicle from Green Eyed Motors, which is in the Boulder County area. They also have pre-owned EVs. And then the Kia EV6, which is also a newer one in Colorado. So make sure you mark that off in your calendar if you do want to test an electric car. And I hope to see you at that one. And then Lafayette, April 30th, we're going to do a showcase, and there's going to be e-bike test rides, vendors, everything sustainability related at their outdoor classroom there. And then the same day, there's also going to be one in Erie. Same idea, a lot of sustainable vendors and renewable energy information, solar, and then an EV showcase. So in addition to attending an event on Earth Day, you can also take the pledge to drive electric. So if you're committed to driving an EV now or in the future, we'd love for you to put your commitment into writing and submit the Be in Charge pledge on our website. If you're already an EV owner, you can still take the pledge if you know that your next vehicle will be electric. And most EV drivers state that once they switch to an electric vehicle, they'll never go back to a gas car. So I hope that'll be true for many of you. Another action here that you can take if you already own an EV is to potentially join an EV club. So in Denver, there's the Denver Electric Vehicle Council, and then there's also the Denver Tesla Club. EV clubs are a great way to join a community of like-minded individuals, and you can gain a lot of helpful tips from people, share your experience, exchange stories, and just kind of build a community there. And there are also clubs across the state. So if you maybe aren't in Denver, we can connect you to a club that's nearest to your location. And then lastly, if you are an EV owner, you can join us and become a EV coach. So if you are passionate about EVs, if you want to help others make the switch, and if you align with our mission to get more EVs on the road in Colorado, I'd love for you to join our volunteer coach program, and you can support at those events and showcase your car, and just get in touch with more people that also want to make the switch to electric. So get in touch with me if you're interested in that one. And then here is our social media if you want to follow along with updated events, learn about status of EVs in Colorado, and I hope you're able to use Drive Electric Colorado as a resource. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Julia. That's awesome. I love the idea of EV coaching. That's actually something I did not know was afoot. So that's really cool to hear about. We had a couple questions from the audience here that I'm gonna bring in. We had a question about current incentives, presumably for Colorado residents. Do you happen to know what the status is as of today?
Yeah, so at the federal level, like I mentioned, the federal tax credit that you can get is up to $7,500. So that's based on your income tax liability. And then in Colorado, you can also add on the $2,500 tax credit for buying a new car. If you're only doing a 2-year lease, you can only get the state tax credit of $1,500, but that's still, you know, a chunk of change coming off an EV. And then in addition, I was mentioning Xcel Energy rebates and programs. So if you're in Xcel territory, which if you live in Denver, you would be covered by Xcel, then you can get, if you're income qualified, they have rebates for used or new EVs. And then if you're wanting to upgrade to a level 2 charger, which is a faster form of charging at home, you can get up to $500 off of that cost as well.
Terrific. Do you happen to know how Colorado compares to the rest of the country in terms of EV adoption, consumer EV adoption?
Yeah, Colorado is doing pretty well. I'd say we're definitely top 10. We're definitely more progressive than a lot of other states. And in terms of states having EV goals, there are a lot of states that have them, but with Colorado's pretty aggressive goal of 940,000 EVs on the road by 2030, that kind of shows how much Colorado is kind of prioritizing the whole shift to EVs. And then with the whole transition of the entire auto industry kind of moving towards there, we're hoping that as a combination with, consumer education and dealerships and utilities, everyone putting that as a higher importance, that EV adoption will continue to increase as well.
Terrific. Do you have a favorite EV model yourself? Have you test driven a few?
Yeah, I've test driven a bunch of them. I do like the Kia Niro EV. I think it's a really easy to drive car. It's affordable. It's like a mid-size SUV. And then I also like the Volkswagen ID4.
Nice. So kind of some different options depending on what fits your situation.
Yeah.
Cool. Any parting words of advice or thoughts before we let you go?
Just if you're interested in EVs, make sure you keep Drive Electric Colorado in mind as a resource and share it with friends or family who have any questions about EVs. It's easier than doing a Google search, so use us as a resource.
Terrific. Well, Julia, thanks so much for being with us tonight. This has been fun, and we'll put those links in the chat, and please, to our audience, get in touch if you have any further questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now I'm very happy to bring on our last guest of the evening. Matt Bailey is the plant manager and an engineer with Odell Brewing Company, which many of you have probably seen in your supermarket refrigerator aisle, or maybe you visited their brewery up in Fort Collins, Colorado. As the plant manager, Matt oversees sustainability, wine production, maintenance, and engineering. And he's an electrical engineering grad of CSU and began his brewing career at Anheuser-Busch in Fort Collins, working in several different areas, including instrumentation, packaging, process improvement, maintenance, and as a project engineer. And Matt, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Trent. Excited to be here.
Great. So Matt's going to run us through some efforts that Odell has been doing in the sustainability front, and how a place like a brewery can actually have a pretty big impact on sustainability right here in the state.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna take a stab at trying to share kind of a broader picture. Can everybody, can you see the presentation okay?
It's good.
Okay. I'm going to take a stab at trying to have a little bit of a broader picture, both specific to our specific industry within brewing and wine production, but then also industry as a whole and how we play an important role with our climate. So if I can just first throw out a few definitions. First one, both of these are from Webster dictionary, and climate is defined as like the average temperature and weather patterns in a region over a long period of time. And industry is defined as the economic activity concerned with the processing of raw materials and manufacturing of goods in factories. So with that said, all industry is solely dependent on the climate and the planet in which we need to produce the goods or products for our society. And brewing is 100% dependent on those, on the climate. We are dependent on grain, agricultural product. We have a close connection to the farms and agriculture, hops, water, yeast. Wine is dependent on grapes and another agricultural product, yeast, water. We're also very energy intense as an industry. We consume a lot of electricity, natural gas, and CO2 as a byproduct from both our fermentation and purchase from other industries. And with the last 20, 30 years, extreme events, I would say, has woken up many of us in the industries and outside of brewing. Brewing's always had a very, I feel like, close connection with our climate, but with that, it's had with the climate change that we've had, that has woken up a lot of people. So what we're doing is we're trying to evaluate grape production, barley production, hop production, and their impact by both fire events, and the devastation of those on society and neighborhoods has been extreme, but also so is like deep freeze impact on those different growing regions, as well as impacts on transportation and supply chain. So one of the things that we are excited about is like working with alternative grains and being very conservation focused, reducing our impact and getting involved. One example of that is here in Northern Colorado, we started a brewery collective called Brew Water, where we are focusing on how we can educate ourselves, neighboring breweries and neighboring industries around our watershed, and how we can share best practices to reduce our water impact. One of the first projects that we got involved with was diversion structure removal here along the Cache-la-Poudre River. And it was something that was funded by the state, and what the collection of all the Fort Collins and Northern Colorado breweries working together, we were told was one of the largest things that helped them fund that project, where typically they don't see a removal of a storage or diversion structure is usually not seen in Colorado. So it's a good example that when we work together, even though we might be competing for sales, but when we're supportive and have a consistent message for our energy and conservation efforts, we can make some really, really positive change. And although these extreme events, with fire and extreme freezing through the winter are obviously a super negative impact on our society, the way we live, and the foods and the industry, or the goods that we need to survive. I will say, I feel like it's helping the increased awareness that we really need to do something now. And what's unique about industries is we also have a platform that we can help share the message and help share the importance of changing how we do our business as a business, and then also changing how our purchasing habits are with our supply chain, and help support municipalities. We work really closely with Fort Collins when they need help spreading a message. Not everybody's following the Fort Collins Utilities Department on Instagram. So, but we might have a broader message through our platform that we can help share that message. So change in our supply chain is extremely important. And inside our walls is also really important, but it's often, almost always, and I would go further than just often, it's almost always very difficult, because change is always scary for most people in their personal lives and their business lives. And progress can be very complicated, as there isn't, one entity to look towards for guidance or goal setting. Oftentimes, as we've seen, our government doesn't consistently agree on how or what we should do to move forward with impacting our climate. So engaging and having diverse conversations with our supply chain, within our walls, is really needed in all industry, as it creates a demand for new innovation, for new ways to manufacture. One example could be, crop irrigation through drip versus, the cover crop water irrigation that's used. But here in Colorado, that's a fear for a lot of people that have senior water rights, as it's kind of a use it or lose it written into the law for the water rights. So it can be difficult to convince a farmer that we want to help partner with to use less water to make good change, when they fear that they're going to lose their water rights forever with what that they've had in their family for many generations. And likewise with like non and low tilling practices for both hops and for barley, that can be quite scary for a farmer because that's something that they've never been taught. So the way that our industry, or in all industries, can be helpful is to create incentives for our supply chains to help convince them of what's in it for me. We need to be able to support our suppliers, both financially and through education, so that we can help grow together and encourage, maybe a small test area to kind of gain trust and build some buy-in within our supply chain. In the end, it's going to help cost less to the farmer in both money and time without using as much fertilizer, as much water, less natural and non-natural ingredients, but be more stable as a producer. It's a slow process and it requires a lot of patience and dedication, but with the end in mind, especially it's really difficult in a couple of industries that we're involved in with both brewing and wine production, that these are several 100-year-old industries, and making significant change can be slow. And it's when we're, inherently impatient as humans, maybe, or maybe it's just more of a product of our society right now, but we have to be patient and keep the end in mind and continuing to work and not give up as we work with our suppliers and our and within our walls. And looking inside, it's really important that we know in our industry, what are our numbers? What is our impact? Many industries are inefficient on how they do things. In practice, it's very typical to buy smaller equipment, but really, when you're talking about manufacturing, buy a larger equipment with more capacity, allows for more production with less energy inputs. And one thing that we've also seen here at Odell is that if there's something that we're really interested in and we want to drive towards sustainable practice, we kind of have to always keep our ear open and not close a book on a technology that hasn't come around yet. So for example, something that we've really wanted to do for a long, long time is CO2 recapture. I could probably bore everybody for hours about fermentation and brewing and wine production, but when you ferment, you create a lot of CO2. And for most people, that CO2 just goes through the vent in the stack and contributes to greenhouse gases. And there's no way to recapture it, because we also need that CO2 when we carbonate our projects and make it bubbly. 10 years ago, there wasn't technology for a brewery our size to be able to recapture CO2 and put it to good use. But now we are, now there is that technology. So instead of closing that book 10 years ago, it's now innovation, and the change has happened where suppliers listened and we can now recapture our CO2, reduce or all but eliminate our greenhouse gases at our facility, and be able to reuse it for all of our products. One model, this probably isn't super new to a lot of people, is the triple bottom line. And I bring this up as if anybody here that's attending is in the industry, it's a sustainable business model for really keeping everything in mind: the planet and climate, society being people, and the business. The planet will exist without society, people, or business. And but society is totally dependent on the planet to survive, and economy is totally dependent on both society and the planet to survive. So this is a credit to Peter Backlund from Colorado State University. He shared this a couple of weeks ago with us. And there's a couple different ways that you might have seen triple bottom line graphics shown, but I really like this one because it kind of infers the dependency on each of all different stages on each other instead of overlapping circles in a triangle. But what I wanted to kind of throw out there as an idea was that I come from a project management background, and so it's helpful for me to think about how the triple bottom line works within a project or the whole life cycle of business, where on a typical project management triangle seen here, if you are going to give up one thing, it's going to be at the detriment or effect of another. So if you want something that's going to be very high quality, you have to sacrifice a lot of time and a lot of money. Where if you want something that's super cheap in cost, you're going to have to give up the amount of time, it's going to have to be very expensive, and you're going to probably have to give up some quality. And if you look at it from a sustainability perspective, they're very similar. It's just like the triple bottom line. If we only focus on profit, the environment and our society is going to be affected. And then if we only focus on society, profit for all of us to have jobs and, you know, work and live is going to be affected, and so is the environment. So sustainability is really in keeping climate and industry in consideration, is the maintaining the balance of all three, with the intersection of collaboration, environmental, financial, and societal goals can help achieve realistic projects where a lot of times we focus too much on one or the other. And consumers are showing that. They're voting with their dollars now. There's many different iconic companies in our day-to-day lives now that have put sustainability forward, and consumers are showing that. If industry can also vote with our dollars, we can support agriculture, we can support efforts within our own walls, and that's how we can really make progress, is by voting with our dollars. Because in a lot of ways, that's where the push comes to shove, is when we spend our money. And it's not linear. It's not easy to wrap our minds around on how we can make change in a place like Odell or outside of our walls, because it's not always like a light switch where if you do something, you're going to have an automatic result quickly. It's going to take time and commitment. And we are inherently impatient, and we feel it's important to set goals and talk to like-minded people and industries and continue to involve and help reach our sustainable balance for all three of these, for both our people, businesses, and ultimately the planet. And that's what I got.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's great. Lots to get into there. And like you say, I'm sure we could dive into the science quite a bit for, that's probably a whole other presentation. We had a question come in about how consumers can know which beverage companies, for example, are undertaking the kind of sustainable efforts that you mentioned. Is there some kind of an independent agency or seal of approval that is an industry standard that is an indication to consumers, or are we not quite there yet?
I think that we're, to my knowledge, we're not quite there. There is a certified B Corp initiative, which does take a sustainable oath and takes a deeper dive into how that company is operating. We actually at Odell haven't had a chance to really dive into that much, so I can't speak with very informed manner about it. But that's one option. And then in reality, it's not a whole lot of like cohesiveness, I guess. Not to sound that's probably not the right way to put it, but there's just so many different industries. Like brewing is one thing, and being part of the BA Brewers Association in Boulder, they put out a lot of sustainability manuals, and it's really kind of up to the breweries on how they're going to participate and how deep they go with it. But as far as just general industry, it's a good question. I'm not well informed in that.
You've sounds like you have lived and gone to school and worked in Fort Collins for quite some time. How have you seen the attitude change in terms of businesses partnering with the city, for example, on sustainability initiatives? Is that landscape a lot different now than it was when maybe you first started out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The city, I would say that the city and industry here, we've learned through the years, through tragedy, through significant events that have been a result of climate change, has worked really close with all industries so that we can understand where our water comes from, the impact from climate change. The city has put on tours of our watershed, tours of our power plant. For instance, the power plant up here is called Platte River Power Authority, and the city is working closely with them to industry to look at ways that we can reduce our electricity demand so that we drop our power plants demand, because as many people are moving to Colorado and our population is growing, we don't need to build more power plants. We can keep power plants lower in production by conservation through industry and our community.
Terrific. Well, any parting thoughts for the audience? Any Earth Day advice you'd like to give out?
Get involved. I mean, that's what I think one of the biggest things that we've seen over the last, I would say 5 to 6 years is just a bit of confusion on many different fronts from both our community and our coworkers, as just, you know, as far as like recycling and what you can do and how you can get involved. And I think we have to encourage people to keep it top of mind and keep it fun and keep it engaging. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do so that it doesn't overwhelm people. And you know, a lot of what we've seen recently is almost feels like it's so much, like there's so much that's needed and there's so much change that's needed that it can be really hard to navigate. And too much information can be really difficult for people to process as well. So keeping it engaging and keeping it interested, and hopefully we connect with people, both our consumers and our coworkers, with things that they can do at home and change their, you know, their how they operate in their community and talk to their neighbors. And that's where the real change, I think, gets exciting and where it happens.
Very well said. Well, Matt, thanks so much for being with us tonight. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks for the work that you're continuing to do.
Thanks, Trent.
You bet. And we'll put the link to Odell's impact page in the chat. So if you want to see more about what the company is doing, you can check that out. We're also going to put in a lot of other resources for both DMNS and the Institute for Science and Policy. Check out some of the other great work that we are doing. The Institute, for example, is running a grasslands series right now. Those sessions take place on Wednesday afternoons, and they're also recorded and available afterward on our YouTube channel. This has been a great discussion. I know I learned a lot. I hope you all have enjoyed it as well. Check out the chat for links to all of our guests and their work. We'll also post them on our website and have them available after the fact. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to send those our way. On behalf of my colleagues at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science and the Institute for Science and Policy, wish you a very happy Earth Day tomorrow. Get out there, get engaged, and you know, we're all in this together. So hope you'll come back and see us again. Thanks for tuning in.